The Canon RF 200 to 500mm was teased for many years, going all the way back to 2019, a lens that excited many pro wildlife and sports photographers with a constant f4. Then the aperture changed to an f5.6 in late 2024, before morphing into a 300 to 600mm with an aperture of 5.6 throughout the entire focal range, and a sense that Canon isn't aiming the lens at pros anymore, but instead aiming at the same market as the Sigma 300 to 600mm. But that lens has a constant f4 throughout the entire focal range, not an f5.6. And that Sigma, it cost $59.99 at launch, but recently dropped to a new low price of $65.99. And yes, I said the price dropped. I was being sarcastic. The price went up a good $600. So that means the price for the Canon, the new Canon 300 to 600mm, will be less than the Sigma, right? According to Canon rumors, the RF 300 to 600mm f5.6 will be well below $10,000 and lighter than the big white 400mm f2.8 and the 600mm f4. But that, my dear friend, was last month. The specs for our favorite telephoto lens that's been teased and rumored since 2019, well, you're not going to believe this, but they've changed once again. We've been told that an RF 300 to 600mm f4 to 5.6 L-series image stabilized USM is in the wild, going through some testing, and is expected to be announced before the end of 2025. As with all announcements, they tend to be a moving target. For those of us that wanted an f4, well, we've got an aperture of f4 at the tight end. And for those of us that wanted an f5.6, well, you've got an aperture of f5.6 at the wide end. Looks like Canon's innovating hard to make us happy. And to be clear, the lens will be f4 between 300 to 400mm and f5.6 from 400 to 600mm. So on the bright side, you're getting 400mm at f4. That's a good focal range. But you could also get a used Canon EF 400mm f4 at half the price. And it's only 4.6 pounds. That's almost half the price of the Sigma 300 to 600mm and almost half the weight. But again, with Sigma, we are getting a constant aperture of f4 throughout the entire focal range. Aside from a value price 400mm f4, the Sigma is a better choice. So, is Canon going to release the 300 to 600mm with a variable aperture of f4 to 5.6 for the same price as the Sigma, or a little bit more? Perhaps. But here's the, what's the expression I'm looking for? Here's where things change a little bit, for lack of a better expression. I also expect Canon to deliver a lighter 300 to 600 by several pounds. Canon's got several patent applications on reducing the size and weight of their lenses, from primes to super telephotos. It won't be hard for Canon to drop a couple of pounds off the Sigma, which is nearly 8 pounds. I think it's about 7.895 or 985 pounds. Take a look at the 100 to 500mm f4.5 to 7.1 at 3 pounds or 1,365 grams. Then there's the RF 200 to 800mm f6.3 to 9 is 4.5 pounds. And look at this beast. It's huge, but it's only 4.5 pounds. How is that possible? Well, this isn't a Pro Series lens or a Pro level lens. Put it in your backpack and this could happen to you, turning into an expensive mistake. This is not an L series, but the 300 to 600mm is an L series. So Canon's going to add some sort of magnesium or aluminum alloy to the barrel, but that weight is going to go up. It's not going to be 4.5 pounds, but will sit somewhere between probably 4.5 to 6.5 pounds. But reducing the weight won't be enough to get people to spend something like $6,500. The Canon RF 300 to 600mm f4 to 5.6 to sell better than the Sigma is going to have to do something that, well, any lens at this price point has to do very well. The lens has to be sharper. Canon can't come in with the competition that delivers an f4 throughout the entire focal range if it can't deliver better optics and reducing the weight. The $6,500 price point isn't what most hobbyists want to spend, no matter how much money they have in the bank. As an old fart with some money in the bank, Neither the Sigma nor the Canon 300 to 600mm are fast enough to grab my serious attention, and that price tag removes it from consideration. I love the RF 100 to 500mm. It's slower with an aperture range of 4.5 to 7.1, but it's light, has excellent image quality, and even when bought new, it costs considerably less. A lens that has delivered for me time and time again, most recently off Vancouver Island. Handheld, getting shots like this at 300 to 500mm. Stabilization is excellent. Wouldn't you agree? And because it's an internal zoom, which does have some potential issues, when it comes to travel, well, it's easy to travel with. Just shrink it down, take the hood off, flip it like this, and you know what? Even the smallest camera bag, it can fit in without a problem. Look at that. And this, most airlines, they'll allow you to stick this under the seat, or it'll go in the overhead bin. And that's what I absolutely love about this lens. I mean, the quality's amazing. It really, really is solid. Now, I understand if you're shooting some locations like Niagara Falls, perhaps you might not want to take a chance because there's a greater chance for water ingress. Based on what I'm seeing from the leaks, from Canon rumors, from mirrorless rumors, from everybody else, the Canon RF 300 to 600mm f4 to 5.6, well, it's dead to me, unless it can do something really special. For hobbyists, I recommend the 100 to 500mm f4.5 to 7.1, or perhaps use a 400mm f4. And for professional work, well, then my go-to lenses, at least, I would say the 100 to 300mm f2.8 and the 400mm f2.8. These lenses are certainly a good starting point. When it comes to running a country, compromise is often essential. But when it comes to designing a lens for Gen Xers with money at a price of $6,500, compromise leaves us with a lens that's balanced perfectly between overpriced and underwhelming. I know what you're thinking, but it's an f4 to 5.6, and that is pretty fast. And yes, it is, but it's also $6,500. I'm not really sure who this lens is designed for. If the RF 300 to 600 f4 to 5.6 interests you, well then please tell me why. I've reached out to some pros and I'm hearing mixed signals about the lens. They are a little bit surprised, but some of them could see themselves using it. Others, they think it's a totally silly thing. I'm perfectly happy with the RF 100 to 500mm f4.5 to 7.1, while I keep an eye out for a good used 400 f2.8. And if you are about to purchase any camera gear directly from B&H, Adorama, or Amazon.com, then please consider using my product links below. This channel is very much viewer supported. We don't believe in adding annoying and unrelated ads to our content, disrupting the experience. And thanks very much if you've used my links in the past. It's very much appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great day, a great week, and we'll see you again soon.